And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. And as you've heard, the first daughter coming to the Gem State. This is huge news. And what an honor. And then you have the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, coming to the Gem State. And coming to a school that doesn't get a lot of recognition, and that is the Wilder School District. And, Ray and I think that was the first or second school that we did when we started Promote Our Schools, Secure Our Future so many years ago. And what an honor for Jeff Dillon. Jeff Dillon, of course, the superintendent there, running against Sherry Ibarra in the Republican primary, back to Wilder, and getting this worldwide recognition to a district that needs all the help that it can get. And it's funny, people are saying, well, Tim Cook's coming, but Ivanka Trump coming to the Gem State, that's good news. And, of course, it's good news for our quest to bring the first daughter here as well. We've got a lot going on, crazy stuff at the border. You have people, going after the Border Patrol folks because they were protecting themselves. Crazy, wacky, zany stuff. Of course, as always, we'll take your calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And back to this Border Patrol issue, a group of about 100 people trying to illegally cross the border. Now, this happened over the weekend near San Ysidro, port of entry, threw rocks and bottles at U.S. Border Patrol agents, who responded by using pepper spray and other means to crowd the people back into Mexico. Now, what's wrong with that? You had heard the president talk about the Mexican officials being throwing bottles and everything else at them, and I love this idea that people are attacking the Border Patrol agents. It's crazy, and it continues to get crazy. Now, last night on CNN, you had Christopher Cuomo of the liberal Cuomo family, going back and forth about President Trump and how bad this was and how unfortunate it was. And in America, we don't do these things. And he had Kevin McAleen appointed by President Trump to be the commissioner of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And he went back and forth on this because you had Chris Cuomo and others making this assertion that our guys were bad. No, our guys were protecting ourselves, and we'll get to that in a minute. First, R&R joins us now. R&R, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Pugilist of Papa John's and captain of the airwaves. You're truly an artist of the airways, and I want to just give you a couple of accolades. I'm fairly certain your mom and perhaps your father heard yesterday's broadcast. It just was so phenomenal to listen to you and your dear friend in his accolades and his respect for you, giving each other heartfelt emotions of friendship, and with his radio on in the background, and you having 50,000 watts of power, and that was just one of those moments. I guess it is Jeff the Suit that says, let your heart show. So there are moments in time, Mr. Milley, when you let your heart show. And you asked me one time who my favorite teacher is, and I'll say it again. You are fast becoming my favorite maestro teacher, right there with Paul Harvey from the good old days. Now, what I want to say about the commander-in-chief and the border is that I'm an old grappler, attempted to be all-state wrestling champion of Oregon in 1968, and that went pretty well. It went pretty well.
I'm glad you threw that in there, R&R, because we were wondering about that. So you think of Ivanka Trump coming to Wilder. What do you make of that? That's a huge honor.
I think that you ought to be the posse. You and Buster and Caroline, and you're her entourage. She's going to need a mountain jester so she can relate to the mountain people. You definitely ought to be in. We should have
the Mountain People Posse, is what you're saying.
The Mountain People Posse on Stagecoach, because I know you like Stagecoach as your form of transportation. and we ought to all stop at Papa John's and have a cheeseburger pizza.
I'm telling you, that cheeseburger pizza is the best ever.
Oh, you lit me up. That's some funny stuff. Anyhow, being a grappler, here's what I got to say. With President Trump, he drew a line in the sand, and I never got to do any sumo wrestling, but I've done some pretty crazy wrestling with some Howleys over in Hawaii where, it's like you step in the circle and you're going to get tossed out, or you're not. And being a Scot, I've done some war games, which is all good stuff. I'm going to use that metaphor to lay down what I see. I think President Trump surprises himself sometimes what he gets out of his 70-plus-year-old body in a workday. That man is the only commander-in-chief I can recall in my entire lifetime, and I'm old enough to barely remember the sound of Truman's voice when I was in the crib. So
Right.
I'm talking Truman through Eisenhower, and we finally have a commander-in-chief, and he's with all faults and with all of his braggadocious and everything he's got stones and he's got grit, and I'm real happy that we finally it's not 1964 anymore. And
Well, you're right. You're right about that, R&R. I got to run, brother.
I know. Keep on keeping on. Let your heart show. Bye.
All right. God bless. 580-5436. 580-KIDR. Top story. Ivanka Trump coming to the Gem State, to Wilder. That's huge. And congratulations, Jeff Dillon and the staff there at Wilder. We'll take your calls on that. Plus, Chris Cuomo going after, the Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Let's take a listen.
Again, the law, whether people cross illegally or present out of port of entry, ultimately they can still request asylum in the United States.
I mean, you can't change legislation by executive order. I mean, look, that's not your job. You're not a politician. But the president was openly critical of President Obama for doing exactly that with DACA. He tried the same thing here. He got the result he got in court. Let's talk about the acute situation that you had to deal with.
Before we get to that, though, you can create legislation. President Obama, now former President Obama, disobeyed the courts and created DACA, which is still unconstitutional. President Trump tried to legislate through executive order. The court said he couldn't do it, so he listened to them. Very different ways of conducting business, very different ways of being effective. We continue on now. Chris Cuomo getting mad that we're protecting the border. We're protecting the border. And by the way, you're going to hear some insight from this young man that hasn't been reported in any other media outlet except right here on KIDO Talk Radio.
What is your understanding of what happened that led to the officers responding?
Yeah, so we had several very dangerous and challenging situations at multiple points of the day yesterday and at multiple areas of the border. After the caravan, who was marching relatively peacefully and orderly toward El Chaparral, that's the Mexican side of the San Ysidro port of entry, the federal police tried to stop them there. They didn't want them to stop traffic, lawful traffic. We got 115,000 people a day that cross that border each direction every day. A huge amount of commerce, lawful travel, people going to school, people going to medical appointments. The Mexican police wanted to prevent that from being disrupted. Unfortunately, the migrants pushed through them, overwhelmed them, went around them, and down through the Tijuana River Channel, and then tried to enter the U.S. unlawfully through the southbound lanes of the port of entry.
So here's what we know. You have people using the port of entry legally. And all of a sudden, here comes the band of criminals, the caravan of criminals coming by. And, of course, the press is going to say it's women and children and everything else, but it gets better. And remember, you're not going to hear this anywhere else. And the analogy that I like to use, if someone comes to your house and pushes and breaks down your door, you have a right to tell them no. You have a right to call the cops. You have a right to defend your home. Why do we not have a right to defend our country?
We responded and prevented that access at the borderline. They then went back around San Ysidro and then started to look for a weak spot in the international border fence on the east side of San Ysidro. At several points, they tried to tear down parts of the wall and make a large group entry, and it was in those engagements where people started throwing rocks, assaulting our agents. We had 4 agents hit with rocks Thankfully, they're wearing protective gear. We don't have any serious injuries, but they did have to respond to resolve those assaultive engagements as safely as possible with less lethal pepper ball spray as well as CS gas.
So here we go, and Cuomo will respond in a minute. We'd love to get your thoughts on this. So the caravan, they're a bunch of criminal bullies. If they're not going to be let into your house, they're going to try and tear it down. And they're using military maneuvers, trying to outflank folks. And here you have, empowered by the president, empowered by Donald J. Trump. Nope, you're not breaking into our house. It gets physical. And these agents who have been much maligned, and by the way, in the Treasure Valley, there's only one show that goes to Washington, thanks to our friends at FAIR, and listens and talks to real Border Patrol agents, real ranchers, to give you the real story. Kieran Donahue, Canyon County Sheriff, we hooked up with him in D.C. It's not that we're highfalutin, but we're bringing you the story as it really happens, the real story, not what you're getting anywhere else. And coming up, Chris Cuomo gets huffy and puffy about the Border Patrol agents protecting themselves. They're just doing their job, and thank goodness they are. Also coming up, we didn't get to this yesterday, but you had a bunch of folks at the University of Oregon, well, thinking Thanksgiving should be a thing of the past because of the past. I'll explain next. Kevin Miller, thank you for joining us on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. So here we have it. Christopher Cuomo getting mad at the border agents for protecting themselves.
Tear gas.
Correct.
Is there such a thing as the good kind of tear gas? Every tear gas I've ever been hit with has been nasty. There's only one kind, right? I get what pepper balls are. That's something else. Tear gas is tear gas, right?
Yeah, the CS gas we deploy is standard law enforcement.
Right. There's only
issue.
one kind, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's in our equipment inventory. It's trained.
Yeah.
All of our agents have to experience it like you did before they're even allowed to carry it, much less deploy it.
Right. Why did they need to use that when you knew you had women and kids out there?
So, again, the people facing our agents were adult males throwing rocks. Mm-hmm. That was the lead element who was threatening our agents. That's what they responded to with these less lethal devices. And it was effective at ending that threat, moving the situation back safely into Mexico and dispersing the group.
What about the women and children?
It's very unfortunate that parents are putting their children at risk and bringing them into that situation to try to rush through the border illegally and being present for that kind of an interaction. If people are throwing rocks nearby, you're facing law enforcement professionals. It's not a good place for you to have your child. So it's very unfortunate that some children and women had to rush away from the gas and were affected.
Well, Cuomo didn't like that. However, he's right. It's the responsibility of the parent. You don't want to get hit with the tear gas and everything else. Don't try and break into the border. Don't try and break in, right? Think about that. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. All we're hearing about is, from the media and everything else, is how the Border Patrol under Donald Trump, mean, nasty, and everything else. Right? And yet here we have the truth being told. The truth being told again and again and again. So that's one issue. Now, another issue here is something that was brought up at the University of Oregon, and this is scary stuff concerning the future of Thanksgiving. So you have this group called Campus Reform, and what they do is they go to the campuses and find out if or how much liberal indoctrination has been taking place. So they ask these kids about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a good time, right? Turkey, stuffing, pilgrims, that sort of thing. Well, let's hear what they had to say about Thanksgiving.
Thanks, but no Thanksgiving. It's about decolonizing a holiday, about finding the racial problems and the cultural problems with it. What do you think about that?
That's great. But doesn't help natives, does it?
Yeah, there's definitely a racial history or a racist history to Thanksgiving. Okay. And that should probably definitely be addressed more in education.
The whole concept of taking land and assigning a value to it through cost is it was different through European cultures.
Oh, yeah, sure, there are racist aspects of its history, definitely.
What would you find racist?
The fact that we're celebrating taking away land from natives.
Okay.
It's pretty racist.
Well, just about, like, honestly, like, I'm not super educated on the topic, but I just know that it has to do with the way that the settlers kind of treated the native, the natives who lived here.
I think that the actions taken, colonial imperialism, stuff like that, I think there's definitely hints of that. I wouldn't necessarily call it like a racist holiday.
The historical background of the interactions between Native Americans and the Puritans at the time, yeah, I will say that there is some ingrained racism in that.
There we have it. Here we have people at the University of Oregon. Now, I wonder how many of these people that are critical of Thanksgiving actually took part in Thanksgiving. And that's the scary part about this. The libs have taken over everything. Columbus Day is bad. Everything else is bad. We talk about this white privilege and everything else, which is divisive. We have, again, one-way racism street, thanks to former President Obama and his crew, in my opinion. And now we have this. At the University of Oregon, people saying thanks, but no thanks to Thanksgiving. I love this. Is Thanksgiving racist? And these kids are going to be the future leaders of America today. This is why we continue to fight. This is why we get up and we start the day on the right side. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work.
7's Eric Gabbard.
And thank you, Larry. I mean, is nothing sacred? I love the headline from the Washington Post. Trump loves kids so much, he's tear gassing them. Of course, the Washington Post will not give you the real truth, and that's what we try to do here each and every morning. Hank in Boise, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning. I might point out that the true story of Thanksgiving is that William Bradford on Plymouth Plantation. And actually, the Pilgrims practice what the liberals preach now. Both your media and also your higher ed preach. That was socialism. It failed. They had a starvation period of time in Plymouth Plantation. The same thing in Virginia Company of Jamestown. They had a starvation time because they adopted socialism at first. And when they did, finally give everybody in each individual plot of land and told them to basically that they weren't going to feed them from a common warehouse and everybody had to raise his own food and sell his food. That's when they came into prosperity and much over. They had more food than they could handle.
Right, but Hank, let's react to the clip. What do you make of these kids in Oregon buying into this stuff?
Well, it's because, again, our taxpayer money is going into socialist propaganda at the university. Eugene, Oregon, University of Oregon is one of the most radically left universities on the West Coast. The only one that beats it is Berkeley. And they've also been a factor in Oregon politics. What used to be, years ago, a traditional Republican county, which was Lane County, which Eugene is in, the university turned it into a deep red state, and it's one of the bastions besides Portland that keeps Oregon blue. And these kids don't know any better. They get it from the schools, and of course their teachers got it from higher ed. We've got it at Boise State. Boise State is the anchor, one of the anchors of Mayor Beater's machine in Boise. And where our taxpayer money is being used to basically train Democrat politicians, give them jobs, just like the House Minority Leader here in Idaho. He works part-time at Boise State. He teaches his students his leftist or liberal propaganda. Then like Sue Chu and the others, they go to the legislature. And they basically, slowly but surely, starting with Pat Dorman, slowly flip Ada County. Now, if we're going to pay our taxpayer money, don't we as a people have a...
Hank? Well, we lost Hank on that one, but his point being you have these public universities. Should they be reflecting and respecting American values? I would say Yes, more on that in a minute. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Waking up on the right side, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin.
Big day in the Treasure Valley. Ivanka Trump coming to Wilder, the Wilder School District. Props to Jeff Dillon and the staff there. Kevin Miller here, taking your calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Obviously, we want to get your thoughts on this and just what we got from campus reform about people attacking Thanksgiving. Can you believe that? Here you have, and this is at the University of Oregon. The University of Oregon, where you have people going after Thanksgiving. Now, how much longer is Thanksgiving going to be optional? You're going to be one of those people that don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Crazy times indeed. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Don't forget, as always, we are your home for Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity, of course, and Lars Larson as well, and Fox News on the radio. Joining us now, live from Washington, D.C., our great friend, Rachel Sutherland. Good morning, Rachel.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
So the president going to Mississippi ahead of the Senate runoff. He's already tweeting about it. He's getting fired up. He's hitting the road quite a bit.
Absolutely. You know, obviously his schedule has been jam-packed leading up to the midterms. He was going across the country, putting a lot of miles in Air Force One, trying to boost these Senate candidates. And this one in particular, this is a runoff. He just tweeted about it like a few minutes ago. Polls are open in Mississippi. We need Cindy Hyde-Smith in Washington. Go out and vote. And he was there, as you mentioned last night. So was the Vice President and Senator Lindsey Graham. So Republicans really throwing everything they have at this seat so that she can hold on to it. She's the incumbent, but she took over after the predecessor fell ill, health problems. So she's expected to maybe squeak out today, but it really shouldn't have been this close in Mississippi. It's deep red state, and I believe President Trump won Mississippi by some 18 points.
No, you're right about that. People have been talking about this. So people have been attributing this to a remark she said concerning lynching. Yeah,
she said something to the effect of, if I were invited to a public hanging, I'd be in the front row. And look, I mean, if she had said that, you know, where you are in Boise, maybe not such a big deal. But this is Mississippi. This got a painful history of public lynchings. And so that really upset a lot of folks and made this race a lot tighter than maybe anyone expected. And you know, she said she didn't mean anything by it as far as any kind of racial remarks. Right. So a lot of people took it that way. And again, I mean, this is Mississippi here. And so, but if she does pull it off today, that would expand the Republicans' majority in the Senate to 53 seats in January. And that would be a net gain of 2 for Republicans. And that means it would be easier for them to confirm judges, or, you know, if there's another Supreme Court nominee, it'll be easier to get that confirmation done.
Well, you know, Rachel, you as a Southerner, you understand the unique intricacies of the South, and, you know, having been in Alabama and Mississippi, it's a very unique flavor that you have, and you have people saying things, and they aren't very politically correct. Now you have allegations, you know, she was in a Confederate hat and those sorts of things, but,
yeah,
no, that might not be a negative for her in Mississippi.
Well, maybe not the Confederate hat. I believe there was some kind of a photo that surfaced. This is a 2014 photo, so a few years old, of her wearing a Confederate hat. That may not be such a big deal in Mississippi, but then on top of it, there was this comment saying, if he invited me, I suppose that's her opponent, to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. It sounds like she was responding to a question, or I'm not exactly sure the context of that remark, but it did rile people up in a way because of that painful history there in Mississippi. And in the South, things are still a little different. I mean, you travel the country, there's different tensions in different parts of the country, and still some racial tensions in the South. And there's still some healing, I think, to be done. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, she will probably pull this off. It just was surprising it was this close in a deep red state like Mississippi.
Indeed. Of course, she's a little different than, you know, people compare it to Alabama and Judge Roy Moore, but different candidates there. Rachel, we always appreciate you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Rachel Sutherland joining us. Remember, when you hear Fox News on the radio in the Treasure Valley, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, and here we have, again, the situation going on in Mississippi, and, we expect the Republican to win, and we expect the Republican to take out Doug Jones, the guy who's in the seat right now, the Democrat, when he's up for election or re-election, which will be in, I think, 2020. But you won't get that from the liberal media. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We've got David Max and Tom Munns. We're going to get to you in a minute as we wait for our newsmaker to join us to talk about Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump coming to the Treasure Valley. This is a big deal, and we're going to, find out why. When you think about Ivanka Trump coming to the Treasure Valley, also Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, and, to Wilder, a very humble school district. We've been there several times. Jeff Dillon, the superintendent, does a great job. Kayleigh McEnany joining us now on short notice from the RNC. Kayleigh, good morning.
Hey, Kevin, how are you doing?
We always love you on TV. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Good to join you.
Now, before we get to Ivanka, I'm sure Mississippi is going the right way, right?
Yes, we do think Cindy Hyde-Smith will pull this out, but it all comes down to the votes on Election Day. It is a tightening race, so it's important that every Republican voter gets out there and votes because this is the key to securing our 53-seat majority. Mississippi is the last race of the midterm elections. I know everyone's probably eyes glazed over thinking the midterms already happened, but there's one more left to go, and then we can truly settle into the Christmas season.
Yes, that would be nice. Speaking of Christmas, we have Tim Cook and Ivanka Trump coming to Idaho, and not really to Boise, where I think half or 75% of the population of the state is here in the Treasure Valley, but to Wilder, which is a very rural district, a very underfunded district, and here you have the first daughter and the CEO of Apple coming. That's a big deal.
It's a very big deal, and they're coming because Wilder School District is the beneficiary of generosity from Apple, who basically has partnered with 114 low-income schools in 29 states, and Wilder among them. They've received help from Apple over the last 2 years. I think every student and teacher receives an iPad, and it's part of a broader plan in Wilder School District to move away from this notion that you have to complete math in 2 years, but rather than having a yearly kind of prescription tied to your education, you move forward based on the skills you've garnered over time, and also that technological innovation was invested by Apple, and today Ivanka will see that firsthand. So it'll be a pretty exciting day for Wilder School District, no doubt.
Well, and we're trying to get the president here. Thanks to you, we've had Eric Trump on, the first daughter coming. The president just doesn't care about the coast, as you know, Kayleigh. He cares about flyover country in states like Idaho.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely cares about states like Idaho. And this president, he's itching to get out of the swamp, loves being out in states like Mississippi, states like Idaho, all across the country. He loves going to kind of the forgotten about states. And I hate to say that, but I think in the liberal media, all too often there's this California, New York prism, but the president really rejects that and loves just everyday men and women, hardworking men and women that make up the backbone of this country.
Kayleigh, finally, your thoughts on the latest media-induced controversy on the border, where you have Border Patrol agents protecting themselves, of course, and we love you going on all the networks to give the right side of the story. We don't hear what's really happening at the border from the press. Your thoughts on this latest controversy?
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing the way we're seeing the media cover this. Custom and Border Patrol were being assaulted with rocks. It's nearly 1,000 people storming the border. And we know that there are now 600 criminals among this caravan. So a pretty scary situation if you're a CBP agent, especially when you have rocks being flung your way. So they made the appropriate decision to use non-lethal tear gas. It's something law enforcement across the country is entitled to do in situations where there's a big threat from a mass group of people. So they did exactly what they were supposed to do, but you'd be hard-pressed to know that watching the mainstream media and seeing kind of out-of-context images of one family when we know, in fact, that the vast majority of individuals are adult males who, in fact, push a few families in front and hide behind them, which is a pretty cowardly thing to do. So All we're seeing is the Trump administration being tough, being fair, but the media not acknowledging that.
Well, Kayleigh, we so appreciate you coming in on short notice and giving us your insight. And thank you again, ma'am.
Anytime. I'm happy to join you, Kevin. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Kayleigh McEnany joining us. We appreciate her. Let's go to David in Nampa. Joins us now on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, David.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. This is two parts, this war on Thanksgiving. One, it's one of the consequences of what happens when God dies. You know, when God dies, you have to be your own God, and also you have to make your own meaning. Let me give you a personal example. I didn't graduate. Well, I did. I had my diploma. I got it in July sometime from junior high. You know why? I didn't do the commencement exercise. My father couldn't get out of a meeting, and he wasn't going to be there. And I said, what's the point? Without God to give your life meaning, you have to make your own meaning. These people want to be heroes. They want to march on Washington and be freedom riders, except freedom's already been ridden and Washington's already been marched on. So they have to find their own meaning, and they have to say, I did this. I did this. I was here. You know, God knows you're here, but of course there is no God. So you have to make your own little meaning, even if it's, you know, even if it's not building a monument, but knocking one down. I knocked that monument down. I knocked it down. I pulled it down. The second is, America sucks next to Utopia. Okay? You look at Utopia and you look at America, America stinks. It's like that Christmas movie where that neighborhood Nazi lady builds a little nativity scene, except some guy wants to, his dying wife, I don't know, his last request, so he builds a Ferris wheel across the street from her, and her display looks really tacky. Ferris wheel on the other side of the street. Yeah. America sucks next to Utopia. Let's look at the average. What's the money line from Thomas Hobbes? That life is nasty, poor, brutish, solitary, and short. You know, privation, poverty, fear, groveling. I always love it how the left is, oh, no fear, no fear. Really? Most people were fearful most of their life. They were dirty, dingy, and yes, slavery is the norm. You know, Mark Twain said there isn't 1 square inch of land on this earth that hasn't been stolen from somebody. I mean, just look at Europe. They used to play a game called Let's Invade the Little Island Off the Coast. So you had, you know, the Saxons came in, and before the Saxons, the Britons, and before the Britons, the Romans, and before the Britons, the Picts, and before the Picts, somebody else that we don't even know their name, and before them, somebody else that we don't even know their name. Yeah. Life has been mean, short, brutish, nasty, solitary, and short. And I'm sorry, but this country is pretty doggone good compared to the rest of the world, and certainly compared to history.
David, great points. More of your calls next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And we go back to the phone. Tom Munns, TomMunns.com. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me on again this morning. You know, we were talking about the invasions, and we were talking about trade agreements and talking about the EU. You know, the stuff is all connected. So when you had mentioned about the caravans, the important thing to remember to me is that the governments have always caused their own problems. They've always created fear in the people, and they've always created solutions. It's part of the Hegelian dialectic Marx and Hegel began. But the thing to know is that nobody talks about the fact that this invasion is intentional, and it's really consistent with the trade agreements, the aid in dissolving our borders, undermining our form of government, collapsing our economy, with the vision of creating an order out of chaos that Karl Marx, the Illuminist Manifesto, Saul Alinsky, and Cloward and Piven have detailed years ago. That being the USMCA will probably be voted during lame duck session before the end of the year. But here's the thing I'm trying to make. Law enforcement is already overwhelmed, and I've already talked to them about this. You know, there's 1 officer per 1,000 people. So one of the things I don't think that we remember is that people aren't lawful because laws are created. Laws in America are adhered to because the majority of people have a moral conscience. Can you imagine? So basically, law enforcement is already overwhelmed. If there's a few of us that become unruly, what then do they do? And they're appealing to the federal government, which I argue is part of the problem in the first place, which fits right into the dialectic I was talking about. And here's the thing. If the feds fail, which they fail on so many different degrees, as the states do as well, and they decide not to defend the border, are the states ready and the people ready to be able to defend their homes and their communities and their states? And this is the problem where government is creating their own problem, because now all of a sudden the militia is made to be the enemy, the Oath Keepers are made to be the enemy, the constitutionalists are made to be the enemy. All the while, the state government got rid of the state guards, so they've lost a vital check. The point I'm trying to make here again is that it's going to be important. This might be a really good, important time for citizens to be able to communicate with law enforcement, to talk about how law enforcement really does need us. You know they need us because they call and they say, well, we've got this person, and if anybody sees this person over here, report it to the cops. Well, this could be a brand new moment for us to be able to realize, you know what, these are invaders, and we need to be able to defend our country. And the other thing I wanted to leave is that with the question that I would like to have answered is, Kevin, do you and I have a right to be able to defend our own homes, our own family, and our own property? And the question,
yes, we do.
And under what conditions? And I actually don't believe we do. And did you know that it's illegal to kill yourself?
I don't know how they're going to prosecute you, but Tom, thank you for the call. Traffic and weather together. Rick Everett. And we continue on quickly to Liberal Steve, unless you want to hold, Liberal Steve.
I think I better hold, Miller. I better hold. I got a lot to say today. And Ivanka Trump, welcome to Idaho.
I don't know if you really have anything to say.
Well, it's up to you whether you want me to hold over or not. I'll definitely hold over because I got something to say about the border, and I got something to say about living out here in Wilder.
Well, you don't live out in Wilder.
I'm a Wilder resident.
I thought you lived in Homedale.
I live closer to Homedale than I do Wilder.
Well, then you're not a Wilder resident.
I'm on the Wilder side of the snake.
Duly noted. Okay, coming up, Michael Stumo on trade relations. GM shutting down 15% of its workforce. Your reaction to Ivanka Trump coming to the Treasure Valley. Huge day. Tim Cook from Apple. As I said, I posted this on my personal Facebook. Congrats to Jeff Dillon, the superintendent of the Wilder School District, the teachers, parents, and kids of Wilder, and you for making a difference. We're just getting started. Won't you stay with us? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.